I'm Derek Stupsky, Sales Director here at Taylor Green Media, and welcome to Synergistic Selling, where we're going to look at all of the parts in the sale and help them move as one, ultimately helping you closing more deals. And this is episode 2, talking about approaching the sale. Now, we know that each and every sales conversation will vary in some form. Nothing is ever going to be the same over and over and over again. But what should be the same is the structure in which you have the sales cycle or the sales encounter happen. And most importantly, your approach should be the most consistent. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. Now, if you listen to episode 1, you heard me talk about the amateur salesperson will try to sell their product without actually fully listening to what the prospect needs. And so if we have the right structure and the right approach in our sale, it's going to make it that much more easier to position ourselves in a prospect-centric conversation. And what I mean by that is making the sale all about the prospect and not about your solution. That should come later on. If we're looking at breaking down the sale, 80% of the sale itself should be asking good questions, familiarizing yourself with the prospect, and putting you in a situation where it makes absolute sense for the prospect to say yes, to want to work with you. Now, when approaching the sale, there are 3 things that we should be really focused on. There's the mental, there's the emotional, and then there's the tactical approaches. When we talk about the mental approach, it's coming from a place, like I said, a prospect-centric focus where we are putting the prospect first and we are actually not selling, but we're coming from a point of intrigue, curiosity, and service. So if we can put ourselves in a situation where we are asking really good questions, really good follow-ups, coming from a point of empathy when we're asking those questions, desire to know more, and taking a real vested interest into the prospect, and then on the back end when it's time to talk about our solution, it's about the service of the solution, not just the features and benefits, you'll come across as an expert and close more deals. On the emotional side, this is where conviction and certainty and the transfer of those emotions comes from you as the salesperson to the prospect itself. So I want you to think of it this way: is if we just sat there and just had spreadsheets, or we had a slideshow just kind of rolling through, and we counted on that as the reason why we're trying to close the deal or the way we're trying to close the deal, we're not going to get as many people to say yes because there's not that human connection. There's not that emotional connection that we're creating in the sales process. So you as a salesperson need to be prepared to take the conviction of your product, knowing it's the best thing that's out there for the prospect to take advantage of to solve their pain. If you're not coming from that standpoint when you're selling, it's going to be very hard to close the deal because you're not going to be convicted. You're not going to have certainty around what it is that you're providing, therefore making it difficult for you to actually sell that conviction and try to pass it off to the prospect. Sales is a transfer of emotion. Someone who is certain and convicted about what they have, they will pass that on through the prospect or to the prospect through their words, through their tonality, through how they handle themselves, the body language. All of it goes into the communication to have the prospect become more certain about their decision. And then the third is going to be tactical. This is being prepared with the right questions, the right scripts, the right presentations, and most importantly, knowing your closing process cold. There's nothing worse than going through a great sales encounter, asking awesome questions, having a really solid, short to the point presentation, conviction is great, and then you go to close them, you go to take their money, you go to get them enrolled, and it looks like you've never done it before. Do you know how fast someone will lose trust with someone after having a great encounter, and then their enrollment process, their buying process is all in shambles? So make sure that you know your closing process down cold, but we can get into a whole other discussion on that. So the 4 massive tips that I want to provide you to help you create a more pro approach is going to be number 1, reps, reps, and reps. And what I mean by that is that the sales encounter should not be flying by the seat of your pants. You should have a script in which you know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and rep. The last thing that you want to do is practice your scripts and tonalities and other things on the prospect. Take care of that before you start having calls or meetings or Zoom encounters or whatever it is, however you're selling. Make sure that you know that process inside and out through repetition. Number 2 is take detailed notes on every encounter. I can't tell you how many times we've had a really good call and then we jump onto a follow-up call or what have you, and then there's no notes. from the previous call that will help close the deal on the follow-up call. Because there's so many different calls that are happening in and out, it's hard to remember all the finer details of the encounter. So if you can take a client-centric approach, take really good notes of their pain points, what they're looking to do, things they've tried in the past, and anything else that you might find valuable to close the deal, now you can take those notes into the next encounter and pick up right where you left off and get closer to a yes. The other tip is going to be objections notebook. This is one of my favorites. If you are consistently getting objections, you should be taking a notebook and writing down what the objections are per encounter. See how many times I need to think about it, or talk to my spouse/partner, or it's too expensive comes up. And therefore, number one, you can start to see trends in terms of your sales. Are you always getting it's too expensive? Does that mean that the value discrepancy is just not being met, right? So if we can start to track our objections, how many of them are we getting? What type of responses are we giving? Are the responses effective? Right? If we get an objection and we overcome it and they're like, oh, you know what? You're right. Let's do it. Well, good. That's a golden objection overcome that we should pocket for next time. So the more that you can keep detailed notes on the encounter and then also keep detailed notes of the objections that you're getting at the end of the sale, the more predictable the sale will become, because you know that when you say this, there's a very high chance that they will respond with that. And when they respond with that, it sets you up to go in and overcome that objection the way that you know how, because you have detailed notes. And the fourth and final tip is going to be knowing your prospects' fears and pain points better than they do. And this just comes from having industry knowledge. So if you're going to be selling cars, if you're going to be selling media services, if you're selling wedding dresses or whatever it might be, you should know the prospect's fears and the prospect's pain points better than them so that you can address it early. And it positions you as an expert when you tell somebody, hey, what we're seeing right now in the industry is that most people are either A, B, C, or D. Does that ring true with you? And at that point, you position yourself as an expert, and now you can unravel that even deeper, and the trust that the prospect will have with you because you show industry insight and you show that you understand, the higher chances there are of you closing the deal. So that is the 4 big tips that I want to give you today to help you turn pro with your approach. They are focusing on reps, not practicing on the prospect, having a detailed notes per encounter so you can pick up right where you left off in the previous conversation, your objections notebook so that you are now in a position to become more predictable in the sale, and then knowing your prospects' pain points and their industry pain points better than they do. So I really appreciate you tuning in today. If you loved it, drop a like, comment, subscribe, send it to your friends, and give me a follow. If you hated it and you thought it was terrible, send it to your enemies so we can still get some views. Appreciate that. Much love. We'll see you on the next episode.